Hey, everybody in chat,
Sorry.
thank you for bearing with us. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Cartoonists United panel on explicit comics, censorship, and freedom of speech. Uh, it's April 10th, 11 a.m. where I am, but wherever you are in the world, it may be later in the afternoon or in the middle of the night, or if you're watching the recording of this later, uh, you're completely unbound from time, and I don't know when you are. My name is Iris J. My pronouns are she or zer if you're feeling spicy, and I've got a trio of fantastic creators here to talk with me about censorship in the comic scene and our personal struggles and triumphs in routing it. Why don't you introduce yourself first, Maya, and then Taylor, if that's okay.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Maia Kobabe. I use the pronouns air. I am probably best known for my book Genderqueer, a Memoir, which is also my most challenged work. It is a memoir that touches on themes of identity, sexuality. There are sex scenes, there's brief artistic nudity. So that is my most spicy, I guess, published work, but it is not a porn comic and not an erotic comic. I have also published two other books. I have a book about accessible trans healthcare, specifically chest binding, that came out 2 years ago, and I have a forthcoming middle grade fiction book that's also about gender. But I got my start in porn comics. My very first ever paid comic job was with Filthy Figments, which I'm sure almost everyone in this chat is probably familiar with. And I would say I will be speaking probably primarily about censorship from the traditional publishing political side. I've had to deal with a lot of um, school challenges, library challenges, challenges including on the federal level. There's a really nasty federal book ban bill going around right now. So those are sort of going to be the topics that I'll probably be speaking about most on this panel. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Thank you. Taylor?
Yes, me, Taylor. I'm Taylor Titmouse, but I also rip off my mask and reveal another bird underneath Taylor Robin, author of Hunger's Bite. My experience is largely in young adult comics, but then I also made the transition into adult comics later in life. And so it's been, it's weird going from making stuff for kids and making stuff for adults at the same time, and also having that be such a challenge. I've lost my train of thought, but I make adult comics, I make kids comics, and I make them at the same time. So I guess I'm kind of representing the foot in two worlds of the panel here.
Cool.
Oh,
Cool.
and he, him.
Pom, why don't you go?
Well, hi, I'm PomPoison, but you can also just call me Pom. I'm an indie cartoonist, printmaker, small business owner, writer, and campaign organizer. I make sexy comics that feature trans man main characters. I'm most known for the comic that I debuted with, Little Death, which is a full color, multi chapter, trans gothic, erotic horror epic. I also make slice of life, modern dystopia, and poetry comics. Little Death has been on the front lines of censorship since the beginning. And I'm really honored to have this discussion about censorship. Like, in the pursuit of managing a career through censorship and reaching my audience, I've been certifiably screwed over by multiple financial organizations. And I'm not alone. So thank you. I'm just like really eager to share the insights that came from this experience. And um, I got my start in fandom. And I think that that is really important because one of the things about the experience of being a trans erotic creator is that you get dismissed a lot. And I'm going to talk about that more. But yeah, my pronouns are he, him. Um, and yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you for being here. Uh, really with you all. I did want to ask. Uh, let's cut right to it. Um, we all make art on this. I should also mention that I also draw adult comics as well. So, like, I'm I'm not just like, well, what is all this stuff, huh? Um, so, what would you say? I wanted to present this to everybody here as kind of an opening, sort of rumination. What was your first time interacting with what art would describe as censor-worthy art? And did that experience influence your artistic career? And if so, how?
I mean, if I'm honest, the first stuff I can think of was the mature section on Newgrounds when I was not a mature adult yet.
Dang. I forgot Newgrounds had a mature section back
Oh,
then.
they don't show you. You have to know the link to get to it these days.
Oh, secret, secret. I see. Huh.
For me, getting into fandom in undergrad when I was still in the closet, I used to be really into Mob Psycho 100.
Oh, yeah. That's a
Hmm.
popular one.
Yeah, I would say I've also a long time person who's been in fandom and been reading fan fiction since probably high school or early college. And so experiencing, I would say definitely my first access of mostly like erotic work is definitely in the fan fiction arena, live journal back in the live journal days. But I would say that my first experience of encountering work that was labeled as like a banned book or a censored work was definitely just like seeing the banned book displays in libraries, or usually around banned book weeks, which is in October. But when I was like in high school or even in elementary school and seeing these, there was a lot less book bans going on in like the early to mid 2000s, and the displays were usually, it's titles like um, the To Kill a Mockingbird or The Bluest Eye or 1984. Classic works that are excellent, that have been challenged over and over and over, but are widely available. Like those classic works
Hmm.
are in every single library in America. And so when
Yeah.
I saw banned book displays in libraries with these books, I was like, so weird. Who's challenging these books? And also like the fact that they had been challenged didn't seem to have limited my access to them like literally at all. And so I
Hmm.
don't think I really understood what book banning was or how it impact authors literally until I myself was challenged, which for me the book bans came for me in like fall of 2021. So it's been something I've been dealing with for about 5 years now. So it's interesting
Wow.
to think back on like seeing these early like banned book displays in libraries and just being like really clueless about it, and also the fact that again, like when you see like banned book lists and it's like Harry Potter and like the Bible and you're like everyone can access these books if they want to. So it's not really like they aren't being available to the public.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. Uh, yeah, it's wild how stuff that was uh very controversial in the past these days is so widespread. And it's, also heartening to maybe think that maybe stuff that seems controversial now won't will be regarded as ubiquitous and kind of absurd that we were debating over it in the future, you know?
Gosh, I hope so.
Um, yeah, yeah. So I guess this is kind of a lead into that. And you mentioned it. Uh, what kind of pushback have you experienced for the art that you've made, either online or in real life? Maya, you can go first since you have a pretty storied history with this.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm happy to speak this first, but I'm also so like very eager to hear my fellow panelists' stories about
oh,
this
of
because
course, of course, of course.
my experience has been fairly public, I think, so people have probably somewhat heard about this. But I think there's a couple of reasons that genderqueer has been targeted. I think one is the fact that it is a comic, and I think people respond more viscerally to images than they do to words alone. So I do think that comics are more vulnerable to challenges than prose overall. I also think because it has a really obvious title, it has gender in the title, and
Mm.
the Moms for Liberty conservative Republicans who are keyword searching for books to ban, like looked up gender, and my book just like, or queerness, and my book came up at the top of the list. My book also won a couple of awards from the American Library Association in 2020, and award winners tend to be purchased by librarians. So my book was in most public libraries because it had been recognized with a Stonewall Honor for queer works and an Alex Award, which is for like books that are like tip over, like whether they're for older teens or adults. So like a lot of books that sort of trouble that, is this a YA book? Is this an adult book? It has adult themes such as sex and nudity and medical, like there's a pap smear exam scene. Um, And so I think those are the reasons why I think my book became kind of the poster child of this book ban moment. The first challenges that I heard about were in the fall of 2021, which you all may remember was a midterm election year. And my book was
Yes.
heavily targeted in Virginia, which was having a governor race at that time. And the Republican governor, Glenn Youngkin, ran some like parents' choice or like parents' rights over what kids read in schools very late in his election campaign. And some people consider it one of the pivotal ad campaigns that he ran that helped him win his election in the fall of 2021. And because that was successful, many Republicans seized on book banning as the new topic, hot topic. You know, they've done abortion, they've done immigration, et cetera, to run campaigns on. And so I unfortunately think that his political success is part of what started the like federal book ban movement. But essentially, genderqueer was challenged so many times in the final 3 months of 2021 that it became the most challenged book of the year, beating out other titles that have been challenged sort of more slowly across the entire year. And then
Wow.
genderqueer remained the most challenged book in the United States for the following 3 years. So it was 2021, 2022, 2023, and then it dropped down to the second most challenged of 2024 with George M. Johnson's All Boys Aren't Blue, which is another memoir by another non-binary author that touches on queerness, blackness, being HIV positive, is now the number one most challenged book. And so what I have seen basically is a very organized effort of conservative parents, especially in the US, the group Moms for Liberty, basically sharing lists of like books they find objectionable and even like sort of like sample like essays on like how to challenge them and sharing these across like Facebook mom groups across the US and just a complete wave of copycat challenges where the exact same language is used in different school districts across the country and they're clearly like just like handing people forms like here's how to challenge this book in your school district. This is how you challenge book in your school district. I do think that at this point, genderqueer has been challenged in, I think, pretty much every single state in the US. Sometimes a challenge is overturned. So sometimes it is challenged, the challenge is overturned, the book remains on the shelves. Other times the book is then recategorized as adult and maybe moved out of the teen section into the adult section. And sometimes it is fully banned and is then removed from the library. This happens more often in school libraries than in public libraries. But I've seen that happening in the exact same states and the same counties where there's also challenges to trans students accessing bathrooms of their choice in schools, trans students using the pronouns they prefer in schools, trans athletes accessing sports teams, you know, trans, especially minors, but now even adults accessing healthcare. And book bans has been this almost canary in the coal mine, the first sort of like play. And if like the book bans pass in a community, they then attack other usually trans rights, especially healthcare. And it feels like they use book banning as this like testing ground of like how conservative is this community, how much will this community take in rolling back of like human rights, civil rights, First Amendment rights, etc. So that's been really frustrating. And we've now seen the book challenges mutating from challenges of individual titles to challenges of library funding itself. So multiple states have now had challenges where they're basically trying to defund their library systems, which are often voted on, you know, they're funded by like in an election, the voters of the town will vote on, say, a certain percentage tax, like a, you know, quarter
Hmm.
cent tax on something, and that funds go to the library. So repealing library funding so that then the library is understaffed, under-resourced, can't purchase new books, you know, can't keep weekend hours or whatever this is. And that's something that's been really frustrating and scary for me to watch is that book bans morphing into library defunding, morphing into like librarians being targeted and attacked, teachers in public schools who share diverse books being targeted and attacked. And then it's like, again, it's this escalation of rights attacks that is going all the way up to, and like I think anyone in this panel will probably agree, our current federal government is just very hostile towards education in general. And I think the ultimate goal would be completely defund all public libraries, completely defund all public schools, so that the only schools left in the United States are private, generally religious schools, or the like the, you know, charter system and all of this. So
Yeah.
it's this like really frustrating, scary thing where I'm like, it's been a big impact on my life having books banned, and it's like it's really sucked. But I also feel like I see it as just one piece of this much larger attack on queer people existing in public, trans people existing in public, education existing in public, and just the ability to speak freely, especially like in public and on the internet. I also see this as deeply tied in with the payment processors attacking erotic work and like itch.io delistings, which I'm hoping my fellow panelists will speak a little bit more to. But it's all part of one horrifying web.
Yes, absolutely. Uh, Palm or Taylor, do you want to pick up the ball and run with it from there?
Yeah, Maya, I think that it's so great that you're giving insights into um, how we've been losing ground on these good causes. And I think that there are definitely ways that we can start winning again. Um, I think that there's a lot of just I noticed that with all of these book bans, there is a lot of pressure towards censoring, like you said, the images over the words. And yeah, I've been harassed online as well. And I'm gonna be so real, making erotic comics and being a trans creator online puts cis people on their worst behavior. And a lot of times also the call is coming from inside the house too. I think that it's like um, it's kind of a fear-based, um, it's kind of a fear-based system where people are becoming a lot more afraid to express themselves and to critique um, trans art and LGBTQIA plus art in general and view it on good faith. And for me, socially, though, the harassment is not the worst problem because it does not affect my financial and social situation as much as the stonewalling does. Um, I'm going to disclose that I had an art education and I've worked in galleries before I became an erotic artist. So, what I experience and what I know is that art is about what you feel when you experience it. In the art world, if you look at a piece of art and you say, this art is bad because it made me feel weird, you're gonna get mocked. But because the government's dehumanizing campaigns aimed at the LGBTQIA plus community over time, the banks, the crowdfunding businesses, the subscription platforms, and sometimes even cultural institutions like art organizations, um, museums, and publishers are judging queer and BIPOC art that way. And they are censoring art by using bad metrics. And they only do it for marginalized people. They especially consider trans and BIPOC people to be more provocative and less respectable. And I'm going to also say that they do this for disabled people too.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
would be like collaborators, like people who could, in theory, help us gain access to readers and collectors, um, also end up being kind of cowed into um, the stonewalling as well. And it's it's kind of part of losing the battle, but I think that there are definitely ways in which we can shift the public discourse in our favor back and start winning the small battles and turn those into bigger wins over time.
Yeah, really well put. Absolutely. It's been the culture is absolutely wild right now. And, like you said, like it's art is supposed to make you feel things, but it's almost like there's a war on feeling things right now in this country,
Mm-hmm.
as absurd as that is to say. But yeah. Taylor, do you want to go next?
Honestly, I'm not sure I have anything more to add that these two have not covered in perfect depth because I'll be honest, I actually haven't had too much personal experience, or at least direct experience with the censorship. Like the worst I can say has happened to me is Patreon dinging me because I put swirly eyes on a character, which means it's hypnosis, which means it's non-consensual because hypnosis is real. And it's just those
Oh, sorry about
more
that.
like a death by a thousand cuts kind of thing, where it's just getting dinged for these incredibly minor, nobody would think this was real type things, or like I drew tears in someone's eyes once, little freaking circles, and that got dinged, which I
Hmm.
don't think anybody actually picked on. I think it was an AI scanner thing, or like how Blue Sky will scan things. And that alone is also kind of scary, where it's like, how is the computer supposed to know what consent is,
Mm-hmm.
especially when that's getting added to every TOS? It has to be clear consent. What do you mean? And
I
it's
think that
just
that's, oh, sorry.
everything being put up to interpretation by the worst actors or robotic actors. And
Oh,
it's just
yeah.
frustrating.
I think that that's really valuable to talk about too, though. Not just like the like big efforts to block, but also the little ones, because I see it in so many other creators, this sort of reflexive flinching and self assessment before they post something like, okay, so does this meet this, and this criteria? Who's going to say something bad about this? I need to, I need to concoct a little puppet version of the worst possible person I can imagine who's going to see this so that I can already know how to route around whatever critique they might come up with, even if I know it's bad faith. And ultimately, it stifles creative output and it stifles free expression.
Yeah, like I've had
Um,
so many
Mm-hmm.
arguments in my own head justifying like a drawing where it's like I will think I'll say it was this. I can explain it as this, but I know that the person making those decisions doesn't care. It
mhm.
doesn't matter. Like the swirly eyes were because somebody was tired, not actually hypnotized. It was unambiguously not hypnosis. It doesn't matter. They don't
Yeah.
care.
No, yeah. 99% of the time, it doesn't matter. But the
But you're still going to
1%,
go through it in your head.
yeah, exactly. And with people in charge being in controls of the levers that operate the AI bad faith moderation tools and the the people who are always constantly on the lookout for this kind of thing, it makes the environment that much more hostile to it. Um,
I just
I want to
wanted
also, oh, sorry, please.
I just wanted to pitch in and say that I also 100% agree that these similar things, such as increasingly numbers of online platforms in which we have the venue to share or sell our art, changing their terms of service to make them like more and more restricted, and you have to be more and more clear. You can't show a half humanoid having, sex with a human or like
It has to
whatever
have
their
human
like
knees.
Yeah.
ridiculous rules are. This is also part of censorship, and it's also part of this ongoing project of like limiting what full adults can legally publish, and buy on the internet. And it's
Hmm.
extremely frustrating that specifically it seems like two or three payment processing companies like Visa, MasterCard, PayPal can determine like what we can and cannot like sell online or buy online with our human dollars that we earned with our human
Yeah.
labor as adults. And I definitely see this as part of the ongoing, like the wider like censorship web, and also that we are currently unfortunately living under fascism, and one of the goals of fascism is to break everything down into like really specific and binary categories, which is part of they hate anything that's gender fluid, anything that's gender nonconforming, right? They don't like things that trouble the lines. And like one of the specific goals of our current fascist administration, which they published openly in the Project 2025 document, was to reframe all trans, specifically trans work, but also queer work as pornography. And
Mm-hmm.
so because it is being recategorized from like literature or art into pornography, it is less protected under the First Amendment. If it can be legally defined as obscene, it no longer falls under First Amendment protection laws. And so like we are all feeling the effects of this, even if it hasn't like fully legally passed yet. We are living under a government that is trying to broaden the definition of pornography so that they can say that this is not legal, this is not allowable speech, this is not allowable content on these various platforms, which again, like limits what we as adult humans can read about, write about, draw about, post about, speak about, and sell online. And it is absolutely part of this like censorship web.
Oh yeah. I want to be clear that like our conversation isn't necessarily just limited to pornography, or even to work that includes sexual themes, but just literally like the broadest definition of what constitutes like controversial or bannable comics. Like it's this is why working in more niche areas, even stuff that is many of us would consider more risque, such as stuff like dubcon or incest, even those where a lot of people don't really like engaging with them, those are still the rights of those creators are still valuable to protect, because if the more ground we give up, the easier it will be for the folks who are pushing these initiatives to claim, well, if you thought that that was some weird sex, well, I got some real weird sex for you. Trans people or
Mm.
gay people. Whoa. You know,
Hmm.
it's a battle of degrees.
Yes, and I definitely think that career and as far as like, I think again, we're in agreement on this, but like creators of porn and sex workers online have been the sounders of the alarm earlier than any other genres because they are
Hmm.
being attacked first, and we have to defend that with like within every inch of our effort because yes, it's like they'll ban one thing and then they'll ban the next thing and they ban the next thing and they ban the next thing, and it's like in published books, the topics we're seeing challenged the most are books by authors of color, or especially that include the history of race and racism or experiences of characters of color experiencing like racialized, attacks, conversations, whatever. Sex ed and sexual health, especially abortion access, things anything to do with about being HIV positive, HIV prevention, and then just queer or trans or non-binary characters literally just like living their lives. And increasingly, complaints that even the most innocent of queer scene, hand holding, a brief chaste kiss, being called inappropriate for children, inappropriate for teens, inappropriate for school libraries, etc. And so it's like we have to we have to fight for the weirdest stuff, and because they will, if they are able to ban, if the book banners and the content moderators and the regulators of our online spaces are able to ban, yeah, like something that even, something that I personally may not want to read or consume, I
Hmm.
still want it to be free to post, free to write, free to sell, etc. Because they will just keep everything that they ban, they will then escalate to the next step. So we have to defend everything. Free speech for all.
Yes, absolutely. Um, I wanted to actually rewind a little bit and go back to topics of payment processors and other financial obstacles, because when I talk to other uh, explicit comics creators, I know that is literally the conversation always goes back to that. Um, I wanted to ask the panelists here, what kind of financial obstacles have really affected the way that you kind of sell your work uh in the modern landscape, especially online? And what are some ways you've navigated around those, if you've been able to at all?
Maya,
Uh,
do you want to go first?
I can go. My intro is terrible. I excluded the fact that I have worked as an editor at Slipshine for several years, a porn comic website, for those not in the know. And every few years, we would get that audit from our payment processor. And it's like some of the stuff that we weren't allowed to do was ridiculous. One specific example that I can remember, and Nero in the audience will remember, was there was a panel, like a single panel of a character playing video games when they were a kid. Not sexual whatsoever, just one random flashback. We had to change that. We weren't allowed to have that. We had to make them look more adult. And it's just little things like that where it's not even what you expect to have to deal with, but somebody sitting at a desk in some office reading an absurd amount of porn decided that was the problem. That was something that they just could not abide. And it has been annoying. Like every time somebody will send me a pitch where it's like, I personally find this hot. This is fun. This is awesome. You can't do it. I hate
Hmm.
that. I hate having to do that.
Yeah.
It's frustrating.
I'm so glad you brought that up. With the previous comic Split Check that I do with Nero, like
I'm
we
so
had
sorry, Iris. I forgot that you wrote that one too when I just said narrow.
Hey, no worries. No, that was our comic. But
Yeah.
there was another scene that I can't get out of my mind, honestly, that was so the comic is about running a restaurant. And a significant part, some critics might say too significant, is not involved with sex at all and is mostly about the restaurant industry and also unionizing within the restaurant industry. Um, so like there was a scene that had a group of people with a toddler at the table where they're talking about dietary constraints. Um, and
Did we get
you
pinged on
know,
that too?
we got pinged on that too, and
Oh
they were
my
like, "You
God, I can't
can't,
believe I forgot that
you,
one.
all of your comics on Slipshine need to exist in an alternate universe where people like spring forth fully formed from eggs or something. We just can't ever see kids ever." So we had to change it to an adult who is currently on the toddler diet. Because if you eat like a toddler, you'll be as light as a toddler. But which is a stupid joke in and of itself. But like the fact we had to do it feels insulting.
God, I can't believe I forgot that one.
Yeah, it was nuts. Um, but yeah, and it's a similar thing with, and feel free to jump in at any time, Palm or Maya, but it's a very similar thing with Itch, where uh recently the whole thing with them is they're a lot more laissez-faire about what you can post on their website, but they delisted all adult works from their search functions. So discoverability is basically way down, and the onus of marketing your work is entirely on the creator. There are people who just browse through Itch and look for stuff to check out, but they can't find adult work very easily anymore. And in
Yeah,
order to
that
route
happened
around,
to me.
yeah, it sucks.
It really does. Oh my God, it was a huge blow uh to me as well. Um, I can start talking about my financial barriers if you're ready to move on, Taylor.
Oh, I'm done.
Alrighty then. Well, I first ran into a major financial barrier in 2023 when I got suspended from Patreon because a gang of transphobes spuriously reported my account. And it wasn't the first time that I had been reported. Um, so it was my third strike, and my account was suspended, and I had earnings in the account, and so Patreon took my earnings. And so they also disallowed me from contacting any of my patrons. I
Jesus, I'm
tried to
sorry.
make an appeal, and I was told by the automated mod that I was uh, violating their terms of service against sexualizing minors or whatever. The report said that I was drawing lolly, which I wasn't. I posted a reference image of my fully clothed character, Ellery, who is a trans man. Um, yeah. Anyway, it was traumatizing. And I lost a lot of my patrons. They did not know where to find me. I had a backup subscribe star, but no way to tell people that that's where I moved. And so a lot of people thought that I just jumped ship and went AWOL. So after a while, um, I had moved to Subscribe Star. I was taking commissions to make up for the lost income. And then PayPal Um, Ended up in 2024, allowed a commission client to blackmail me for cash by threatening me with PayPal's anti-adult content terms of service. And I had finished the
Jesus.
commission. I gave it to the client, and then they reported me for a massive refund. And so they were fishing for a refund, and I had to give it to them to close the report.
Oh my God, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a nightmare.
That's awful. But it just
And
goes to show. Oh, sorry, please. I didn't know you were continuing. I'm sorry.
I am continuing. Believe it or not, there's more.
Wow.
When Itch.io indexed my account and they suspended two of my publications, I lost a great deal of income too. And then there's Zoop. So I think Iris, you might know about Zoop and
Mm-hmm.
the complete horseshit that they did. Um, but yeah, Zoop is a crowdfunding service for comics. Um, in the middle of October, I created an account with them to run a print run for my series Little Death. And I was really eager to work with them. And everything seemed great. I made the campaign story. I reached out to them. But the way it works is they offer crowdfunding services, printing, distribution, and promotion for a flat $700. And
Mm-hmm.
first, you have to make a coming soon page. My coming soon page was approved on October 23rd. And when it was approved, I got the message on the creator dashboard reading, you need to have 25 email signups to go live. And so far, they hadn't charged money outright. They just wanted email leads. And so I reached out to them and I was like, hey, I have so and so plans for my campaign. I just want to make sure with you guys that you're cool with the content in my comic. And because I'd been burned so many times previously that I didn't want to get burned again. And so basically, they sent me this email back that said, okay, on quick appraisal, um, we're cool with adult content and even dark content, but oh, wait, no, they said we're cool with adult content and even trans content. Like the trans content was the thing that they were going out on a limb for.
I'm sorry, that's so awful, but holy smokes.
And so I was like, okay, bro. And then and then they were like, just send us the comic so that we can see if this is okay. They said that they did research on me, and like they were concerned that the content that might be objectionable. And so I was just like, okay, that won't be a problem. I sent them the comic, and so um I reached out to them on October 27th. I sent them the comic, and then by October 29th, I obtained the 25 email leads necessary for going live. And I was expecting them to reach out, and they didn't. And then on November 3rd, I reached out to check if they needed anything from me. Hopefully, that have reviewed my comics by now and would let me know if they could work with me. They did not let me know. Um, I reached out to a peer who had had a lot of success on Zoop, Alexis Flower. Um, he he didn't help me, but that's whatever. Um, on November 30th, my campaign was well over the required 25 leads on my coming soon page. I was frequently adjusting the page to appeal to viewers. And finally, on December 10th, I had 50 email signups and I was reaching out to them. And finally, on November 14th, I went to their main page and noticed that a campaign called Undead Homes, which had been created 1 month after mine, was now live. And it had obtained 21 backers before going live. And then I reached out to them by email and on December 15th, um, a team representative from Zoop named Eric just responded to let me know that they intentionally ghosted me all those months to see how many signups I got before moving forward. They said, we think 50 plus signups is not quite enough to justify moving forward with, even though the amount that they actually required for everybody else was 25 signups. They said, frankly, even though we consider ourselves progressive, and we are very open to hosting all kinds of stories on our platform, some of the scenes were not quite something we were feeling too comfortable with. With a modest amount of signups, I think we have our answer on whether it would be worth it for us to go down that road. So I think what is craziest about this is that if they were not comfortable with my comic, they should have just told me instead of stringing me along. And another thing that's crazy is that they benefit from the leads I generate for them. When you sign up for email notifications on Zoop, you get marketed other comics that they have on their platform. I signed up to one of their comics, and even though I've unsubscribed, I still get marketing emails for other comics that they're promoting. So take that as you will. I think that Zoop sucks because they strung me along and they acted like they were not wasting my valuable time as a professional. Zoop is poop. I love that. um, yeah, and yeah, since January 1st, I've been trying to accrue signups on my own website, and yeah, because of Zoop's negligence, they intentionally misrepresented their consideration and they had a clear bias against trans creators. That much was clear from the start, and I didn't have another option, so I was just like, well, I should just try it anyway. Um, so yeah, don't fuck around with Zoop. Um,
That's wild. I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
Holy
fuck these
smokes.
guys.
It's so it's so indicative, and like this ties into like kind of a larger thing where I feel like, and we talked about it a little bit when we were getting this panel together. I feel like there's so much of internet history where websites start by making a name for themselves as, ah, yes, we have adult content on here. We're willing to work with adult creators. But then the second that they can get concerned about like even the slightest hint of respectability or marketability or whatever, they are so quick to
yeah,
start hacking away at the platforms for their adult creators, whether it is entirely wholesale, such as OnlyFans, or specific undesirable quote unquote factions within them, such as this with Zoop. Uh, the reason that I feel like sex workers online are the canary in the coal mine for censorship issues like this is because they are both producing the content that so many people come online to see, and also the folks who are the most at risk from these kind of movements. So when the tide rises or lowers, we're the first boats that get hit. Uh,
yeah,
it's frustrating to hear about stuff like this. And that to them, they're probably just like not even thinking about it. I don't know. This is why we need to make more noise about this kind of thing.
yeah. We really do need to make more noise about this kind of thing. And my when it happened to me, I felt ashamed, honestly. I felt really low about it because what they did was they made a value judgment of my time, and they said that my time was not worth it. And what they're doing essentially is they are saying, "Hey, we're the monopoly for adult comic artists, and we're going to decide whether or not you can get in." And that really sucks because they're not considering um they actually don't have any cultural competency whatsoever or understanding of our community.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Um, So we're coming up on the hour mark right now. Is it cool if we go a little bit over because we started a little bit late or?
Absolutely. We actually have you scheduled for an hour and a half, so you're good to go.
Oh, we have an hour and a half. Oh,
Hell
well,
yeah.
all right then. Let's
Yeah.
let's keep going. Okay, good. Because I did want to make sure that we got time for questions at the end of this. Um, yeah, I wanted to. Now we've talked a lot about kind of uh we've talked a lot about like how the world is a trash fire right now. Uh, I did want to talk about some positive things about making controversial art. Uh, I did want to ask our panelists, what are some other controversial or banned works that have inspired you, either in the past with your career or with the stuff you're doing right now?
I'm going to shout out a couple of books. I was deeply impacted by Fun Home by Alison Bechdel, a frequently challenged graphic novel and memoir by a queer cartoonist when I was thinking about writing my own memoir as a queer cartoonist. And then I have to mention like Moz and Persepolis, two of the books that completely changed the perception of graphic novels as literature in the United States, and both of which have been heavily banned. And the book banners come after Moz, which, if anyone is unfamiliar, it's the story of a Jewish American author writing about his family, specifically his father, surviving the Holocaust. And they'll come after it for things like, oh, this book has nudity in it, so it's not appropriate to high schoolers. And it's like, I'm sorry, that a book about people surviving genocide has a little bit of nudity in it. Maybe high schoolers should still be learning about surviving genocides. Anyway, there have been a lot of graphic novels, and I think the ones that have really inspired me are usually people telling a really real human story about something that happened in their lives. I read a lot of memoir, I read a lot of like just I love comics where people say like this is what it was like to be human for me, or this is what my lived experience is. And being able to express that with both their own like visual language and written language. And so many of those books are being challenged and being banned. But I also think that, like we've mentioned, part of the desire of people who are pushing censorship is to silence authors before they even speak, or to put in that chilling effect, that fear that authors who may want to tell stories that include dark, controversial, or just like real elements are afraid of doing so. And I, who wrote a book that has been heavily challenged, still think that putting out my vulnerable memoir and including the pap smear exam, the dildo sex scene, the period blood, etc., writing this book was still one of the best things I've ever done in my life. And despite the challenges and including a lawsuit that I had to deal with, I am still glad that I wrote this book and would not go back and change anything, except possibly to delete the few Harry Potter references that I
Mm.
included when I wrote the book in
There was no way to know.
2018. Could That's the only part that I am regretful about, and the only part that I would go back and change.
Hmm. Yeah. Taylor or Pom? Same question?
Uh, I generally haven't gone out of my way to seek out banned books, but I think my first experience with banned books in a way that it was like, oh, this is something that affects me and people I know was Beetle and the Hollow Bones by Eliza Lane, who was a friend of mine, and just hearing her perspective on having her book banned, because Beetle and the Hollow Bones is about a young lesbian goblin in Halloween Town, essentially, like, very fun, very colorful, middle grade. And it's seeing the things that people would write on the forums to get it banned, where it's just these people clearly aren't even reading the book or looking at it. They know that there is a lesbian in the book, and that makes it worth ripping out of the shelves. And it's like, I'm also in YA. My intro again was terrible. I forgot to say the name of my book is Hunger's Bite. Uh, Horror
No,
YA.
you
The
mentioned.
protag Yeah, I did mention. Oh, I thought I
You did.
didn't.
Don't worry.
Good. It's horror, it's YA, but like the protagonist is a gay vampire, and eventually in the series that is going to come up in a way that matters. And my book might get banned for it. So it's been kind of like a sort of Damocles, really, just waiting for that to happen. Like, I know when that book comes out, it will probably be challenged because there will be gay content in it. And it's just weird waiting for it.
Absolutely. And it ties into that sort of stress that a lot of creators experience right now with not knowing when the hammer's going to come down on you. But knowing that there are other people out there producing stuff like this that are challenging the these kinds of people is really, I don't know, it's what keeps me going, I guess,
Knowing you're not alone in it.
having a lot of other homies who are also making provocative, thoughtful, and also even the stuff that is like goofy and horny and not necessarily thoughtful but fun work uh is really value. It feels like snatching joy from the jaws of entropy. It's great.
Mm.
um Pom, did you have any works you wanted to talk about at all?
Oh yeah, Velvet, um, which is a novel by my friend Friction Press,
Ooh.
is definitely, it's really inspired me, and I always go back to it when I think about like a really good book that is controversial, that is like really meaty in terms of good writing, where the sex scenes are important to the plot, where the characters are so lovable, where the relationship is very taboo, um, where there's a man with trauma who's also horny, and where there's um and there's also incest themes, and um it is a trans gothic story. There is a house that is deeply uncomfortable, and I just love that in a book. And while I'm talking about Friction Press, I would love to plug something. Can I plug Dawn's Dead Market?
Plug
Which,
away.
hell yeah. So Dawn's Dead Market is a digital uh, art 18 plus virtual event which Friction
Oh,
Press
I think
is
you cut out.
organizing, and which I'm participating in. And it's to celebrate creators of hardcore Ecolayan work, so comics, games, and novels that would have otherwise been banned. And the bundle is going on sale May 19th, and the virtual market is opening June 19th to 21st. And I'm going to try to drop a linky in the chat over here.
I think Iris has been trapped in a time prison.
Oh no.
It looks like that
Oh.
is the case, and hopefully she'll be able to jump back in with us in a second. And in the meantime, would y'all be able to share links where people can support your work and find more of you?
Absolutely.
Let me just pull up my itch.io.
Hello, can you hear me now?
She's back.
I'm sorry, the internet cut out for me for a sec. It's weird. Uh, anyways, I gotta look that up later because Velvet sounds amazing, and I really want to find out about the thing you probably explained while I was dead.
Oh, I just sent a link to it.
Oh, sick! Nice. Heck yeah.
Oh, I'll also send a link to Velvet too.
Yes, please. Okay. And I also wanted to ask, we're going to go to chat submitted questions, but finally, I wanted to ask for all of my panelists, what are some things that folks can do right now to fight against censorship and to support creators threatened by it? What's some stuff y'all would recommend?
Can I please talk about Authors Against Book Bans?
Whoa! Yes, you can.
Um, I am a member of Authors Against Book Bans, which is a US-based national organization, but we now also have a Canadian sister org, the Canadian Authors and Illustrators Against Book Bans. And I highly encourage, even if you are not yet traditionally published or not even interested in seeking traditional publication, if you consider yourself an author, if you write and draw or even edit, illustrate, etc., like I would highly encourage you to join. Even if you don't have a lot of spoons to be active, even just becoming a member via the very easy Google sign up form on the Authors Against Book Bans website Authors Against Book Bans sends a lot of like open letters to legislation and Congress people, and just having a larger membership number and saying our 5,000 authors co-signed this can really help sort of like give the letters weight, even if you don't have time to sort of get involved in any other campaigns, because I know everyone here is part of Cartoonists United and being involved in Cartoonists United campaigns. But anyway, if you sign up and say what region you are in, and many states in the U.S., or sometimes two or three states that are next to each other, have regional leaders, and if there is a urgent piece of book ban legislation being proposed in your state or a neighboring state, they will sort of send out an email that's like region local, especially if they are putting out a call asking for authors to show up and like speak at, for example, like a like at your state capital, or something, if they're working on anti-book ban legislation in your state. And Authors Against Book Bans has had some really great wins. Members have helped write legislation that has been passed in multiple states now, including Rhode Island, Colorado, and Oregon, probably some others. We've also helped defeat some really awful legislation, specifically in Florida. And I have felt I've been hugely encouraged by being part of Authors Against Book Bans, and like just seeing tons of authors from all over like teaming up together, sharing information in the Discord, making sure if new challenges are popping up, everybody hears about them, because I often don't hear that my book has been banned until someone sends me a newspaper link or like an online article link. Like the publisher is not letting me know. I'm finding out via social media. And so being a part of a
Wow.
group like Authors Against Book Bans just helps you just like understand what's going on. So I highly encourage everybody to join. Again, even if you don't have a lot of spoons, even just being a member is really helpful. And so that has been very, very encouraging. And then I will also mention the piece of legislation that I briefly referenced at the beginning, is there's a really awful bill called HR 7661. And I've made some infographics about this on my social media, which I'll drop in the chat in a moment. It's a federal book banning bill, and it's only about one page. It's very shoddily written, but essentially what it says is that the federal government would threaten to remove the federal school funding to any public school that includes either literature or programming that basically includes transgenderism and gender ideology. So this would basically cause every public school in the United States, if it passed, to have to decide whether they're willing to risk their federal school funding or remove all programming and literature that even mentions trans people from the public school. This would ban every book I've ever written from probably every public school in the United States, including possibly in states that have passed those anti-book ban, book protection bills. I'm hoping that this bill does not gain too much traction, but unfortunately, it's already passed one committee and it has like 19 co-sponsors as of the last time I looked. So it'd be really great if you were in the United States, if you could check the link in the bill, check if your congressperson is one of those 19 representative or co-sponsors, and if they are, call
Kill
them or
them.
email them and yell at them and be like, "This bill sucks. Don't support book bans. Support free speech instead." So
Yeah.
I'll put some links about that in the chat, because that initially would impact, traditionally published authors more than sort of indie and online creators, but also it would really suck if no, students in public schools in the US had access to like trans affirming literature and programming. That would be bad for all of us. So,
Yeah. Absolutely. Really, really well said. Uh, yeah. It can feel a little bit, I know it can feel a little bit daunting, especially if you've lived in the United States at any point in the past 10 years, to feel like, oh man, I got a call about more stuff. Dang. But calling is what moves the needle, especially with federal stuff like this. Reaching out is how we participate in our democracy.
Hmm.
Uh,
We need
yeah.
all the help we can get, from making your calls to your representatives every day to sending letters every day. Like, you can send a letter to your representative every day. Will they think you're crazy? Yes. Will it work? Yes. You can also write public comments on proposed legislature. Do the forms of activism that you can do. Celebrate the small successes, and the big successes, they will come.
Mhm.
Remember what this is for. This is a widespread campaign of equal rights for all. I know that Sloan asked a question, why should people that don't make erotic art care about this? That's why. because this is about equal rights for all. This is about free expression for all. And I know that we all experience burnout and dissociation. So make sure you become part of a community that checks in with each other. Join a server, join Authors Against Book Bans, join the Cartoonist Co-op, join a friend server. We're all connected by our love of free expression and whole.
Mm-hmm. It was mentioned in the chat, but the Cartoonists United actually do monthly
Oh, I'm sorry.
phone zaps on the first of each month. No, you're fine. That was very well put. I liked the part about freedom of expression and also a love of whole. Um, but yeah, we do phone zaps on the first of each month. So if this is jazzing you up, you can participate with your Cartoonists United fellow members. And we bother both government organizations and also, I believe the current focus is payment processors like Visa and MasterCard to pressure them to keep their hands off of adults purchasing work that they legally are allowed to purchase. Yeah, Uh, but if that's everything, do we want to open up the floor for some questions from chat? Uh,
Heck yeah.
let's
I'm
And
good.
also,
see.
I sent you a couple in a direct DM as well, Iris.
Oh, super. Is that's on Zoom?
It is.
I'm
I've
I'm
already
going.
actually got
Here we go.
some.
There's where the tab is. Can you tell I
Yay.
don't use Zoom that much? Okay. Um, let's see. QB asks, where do I find Velvet? That would be at the link we posted in the chat. That was.
Do we want to share that out loud for the recording too?
Yes, sure. It's going to be at frictionpress.com/velvetskin. And as Pom mentioned, there is a whole lot of other cool stuff put out through Friction Press. Definitely a publisher to check out. At 2:59 p.m., we got a question. Could we get the upcoming title coming out from Taylor again? What was that called?
Oh, I'm actually not allowed to say the name of the sequel yet.
Oh, NDA. Well, keep your eyes peeled,
Yeah,
folks.
but the first one is Hunger's Bite. The next one is coming out next February, but I'm not sure when I'm allowed to say the title.
Right.
Mm.
Wonderful. Yeah, we already
I'm
talked a little.
also.
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Can I also plug another thing?
Yes, please. Please, by all means, do.
On littledeathcomic.com, which I'm going to add in here, I am gathering signups for my print run of volume 2 that it didn't work out with Zoop, but I'm trying to do it myself now. So if you're interested in getting my comics in physical form, go to that link and sign up.
Nice. Please do that. Littledeath.com. Was that correct?
littledeathcomic.com.
Littledeathcomic.com. Yeah, head there. Heck yeah.
Thank you.
Any other upcoming projects y'all wanted to plug while we're here?
I can just mention again that my middle grade book, which is trying to spread the transgender ideology to the youth, is coming out on May 6th from Scholastic Graphics. And actually, we are also putting out a new annotated edition of Genderqueer for the 7-year anniversary is coming out in May 2026 as well. And it's going to be
Ooh.
square and hardcover and have new cover art and a new introduction essay and a new afterword. It contains thoughts, short comic reactions, annotations from 20 people, including myself. And most of the contributors are either comic scholars, trans authors, or people who appeared in the book as characters. So.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. I love me an annotated edition. I've got another question here from Jay Pollock. For our panelists, is there anything you'd recommend for fellow creators of controversial or banned work who are feeling down about sort of all this? Is there any kind of self-care that you do or venting art or anything like that? Uh, Stuff to keep that PMA, the positive mental attitude, as we say in the punk community?
Have other
I did.
hobbies. Like, I'll be real, I haven't figured out the answer to this myself. When it gets me down, it gets me pretty down. But
Mm,
it has helped to have something I can do where I'm not looking at social media for 4 hours, which these days is just Pocopia. Um,
mm,
but have other hobbies, have something that you can do where you're just not looking at it for a while. Or,
mm,
people say just go out and do something because then your brain will say, hey, you are trying to solve this problem. You're participating in it. You're taking control of it, essentially. I'm a shut-in, so it's Pocopia,
mhm.
but that is one thing you can do.
I would say that if adult art is a source of income for you, um, I've been forced to try other career paths because there's literally no other way to get around poverty. And I don't see it as a failure. I feel empowered. And I think other cartoonists are doing the same. Um, so if you're feeling down about that, please don't feel down. There's nothing to be ashamed about. It's really hard. Um, it's also like if it's your hobby, it doesn't have to be connected with what's happening in the online world. You your art is something that is always going to be with you, and you're always going to be an artist. And if it's something that's causing you to be frustrated and down, um, Taylor had a great point. Try something else. Like you can try finding like another hobby. You could try finding another creative medium, and apply kink to that. You could make kink crochet. You could do kink printmaking. I really like seeing kinky printmaking. Uh, but yeah, those are my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think that one of the big benefits of uh one of the biggest pluses that the world of webcomics and the explosion of independent publishing now that we're going through now. It's ironic because despite everything we've said, we're kind of in like a golden age of independent media at the moment, and that's what the haters are trying to stop. But one of the great things about that is that the shape of what a career or what a pursuit of becoming a regular comics artist can take such an incredible myriad of different shapes and paths right now. It doesn't have to be the traditional form of, well, I gotta get big, I gotta get into a publisher, I gotta make number go up, I gotta put out X number of books every X number of years, and this just needs to be like clockwork. It doesn't have to be that. Fate walks a wiggly path. Do what feels right for you and what feels important for you in a given moment. Uh, and just keep nursing that passion for whatever you end up doing. Um, do we have any more questions from the chat?
We do. I
Uh,
sent you a few more.
oh, good. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Um, I'm gonna. QB asked, "How do we financially support you?" I'm gonna wrap the panel with that. Um, AMH asked, "I'll ask a question. I'm asking my contributors for an upcoming zine. What suggestions do you have for young artists who wants to make transgressive art in this area?" Or in this era, not area. Holy smokes. I'm so sorry.
I mean, I think my advice to like young creators wanting to get into it is my same advice for those of us who've been in the game for a long time trying to keep our spirits up, which is like find community. I definitely think even before I was a part of Authors Against Book Bans, a lot of when my book was first being challenged, a lot of other authors who'd faced challenges just reached out to me one-on-one, Instagram or email or whatever, and hearing from other people being like, you're not the first one. People have been through this before. Here's some tips, or here's what worked for me. It's huge. It's huge, right? So if you're young and starting out, like again, join one of the many organizations we've mentioned and reach out to a creator that you love who's doing what you want to be doing in 2 or 3 years and be like, hey, are you willing to answer some questions? Or like, do you have any Do you know any place I can find mentorship? And in my early comics career, I found a couple people whose work I really liked, and like I remember watching as they opened a Patreon or started their first Kickstarter, or self-funded their first, self-published print run book, or they started attending shows. And I kind of was just like, okay, they started 3 years before me. So in 3 years, I'm going to try to be doing what they're doing. And I'll just like use their career path as like a model. But again, then it diverges and you end up doing, whatever you end up doing on your own. So I like feel like finding community, joining groups, gently asking for mentorship, but also accepting if people don't have time to offer that mentorship. And then again, if you're the more experienced creator, if someone reaches out to you for mentorship, like give as much as you feel like you have the time and spoons to offer. I've been mentoring younger cartoonists pretty regularly over the past 2 or 3 years, and I also find that really meaningful and feeds me as like the one who's on the more established side of that mentorship relationship. Like getting really excited about some younger cartoonists' work also like gives me energy. And then briefly to the hobby, I also really agree with what Taylor said about like have a hobby that's not comics and not the internet. For me, that's Taekwondo. I've been practicing Taekwondo for eight
Ooh,
years, and let me tell
Nice.
you, I love to kick stuff. It's great. It's really cathartic to kick things as hard as you can while yelling. And so
so
if
cool.
martial arts or dance or soccer or some other sort of like hiking, whatever it is that you have access to or your body can handle, but especially I've really found martial arts to be a very great outlet for releasing some stress.
If I
Nice.
might also give an answer to advice for people just starting out, and it's why I always tell people is do not act like you're doing anything wrong because you're not. There is this instinct, especially when you're starting out with adult material, to be ashamed of it, to be coy about it, to be always looking over your shoulder, expecting somebody to come and get you for it. And what I have found in my experience is that if you act like that won't work on you, they won't even try. Like there is a reason why the guys drawing Raven with tits as big as her head or Misty aren't really getting attacked. It's because they know it's not worth it. So if you just behave like it's not worth it, you have the confidence that you know that you're not doing anything wrong, that you are just making art, you are just telling your story, you are just trying to make good work. It helps. It really helps. So it's, try to be confident. That's the advice I always give.
And like find a trusted first reader. Like
That too.
even just in the last year or so, two or three friends who hadn't ever written fan fiction before were like, could I maybe possibly send you my first ever fan fiction and you tell me if it's good? And I was like, it's amazing. Keep going. You're doing great, sweetie. You know what I mean? And like find that person who's going to be like your hype squad. Especially if you are making like a sexy comic or a fan fiction, like find someone who is so deeply into whatever freak you are freaking and like let them bolster you with enthusiasm and energy. And another thing is, I have found in my career that when I write work, I'm often trying to write towards a specific person or a very small group of people. Like when I wrote Genderqueer, I was writing it for my parents. And when I was writing some fan fiction, I was writing it for one specific friend who had the same kink as me. And it's like, find that person that you're sort of writing towards. And I, in general, have found it more generative to write towards an audience who loves me or who I love, and who is
Yes.
excited about what I'm working on, and write in that sort of direction of a supportive audience. And that helps me let go of some of that, like, okay, well, the haters say, because I'm like, that work is not for the
Mm.
haters. This work, this memoir is for my family, or this fan fiction is for my bestie. And like, that has helped give me energy for the work. And I also think find sort of the tone in which I want to write it in, or the tone in which I want to use to promote it, where I say things like, I made this, I'm really proud of it. I hope you like if it sounds like it's for you, please check it out. And like promoting it from that position of like, I am hoping this is going to find the people who are going to be jazzed about it, not that I'm afraid that it's going to be found by the people who will hate it, because
Exactly.
my work
Yeah.
has been found by many people who have hated it, and I'm still here and I'm still making queer comics. And even in the very height when I was facing the worst amount of book challenges, which was like 2-ish years ago, when my book was mentioned multiple times on Fox News, it was debated by Ron DeSantis and Gavin Newsom on a stage in Florida. It's been mentioned by Senator John Kennedy on the Congress floor. He read aloud the passage of the dildo sex scene on the Congress floor. And guess what? None of those harmed me like materially. Like I don't know, like I'm still here, I'm still making queer comics. And even at like the height of that negative media attention, I was still receiving somewhere between 5 to 10 more fan letters and like supportive comments on my social media as hate mail. Yes, I've had to ban a fair amount of Instagram haters, but I still check my like the messages from people you don't follow section on Instagram because again, for every one piece of hate, I got like 10 pieces of love. Even in the worst years. And so, in my opinion, like what that shows too is like the haters suck, but the lovers outnumber them. And those are the people that I'm writing for. I'm writing for especially all of those like 19-year-olds who are writing me to say like I have never related to a book before I read your work, or like when I read your work I felt like I was reading my own diary, or like you made me realize that there's words for this that I didn't know existed, or your book made me feel less alone. Like right, that's the kind like those are the people that I'm making my
That's
queer
what it's
work
all about.
for.
There's
Yes,
genuinely
Yeah.
nothing better
those
than the
readers.
teenager, like the kid emails for the kid work,
Yes.
Yes.
but there's nothing better.
Yeah.
Oh
Also, I
yeah.
want to say for me, like the trans people that write to me saying that they never see the kind of representation that I draw about, except when they like read my comics, it is really it touches me. I feel I feel you, Maya, because that's what it's all about, like getting to reach the right audience and like make work that makes people feel seen is wonderful.
Absolutely. Yeah. I that's it's the truth. I always it's a little gauche, but every time I have like negative thoughts like that, I just think back to uh Dr. Frankenfurter from Rocky Horror Picture Show just going, "I didn't make him for you." Uh you make stuff for the people you care about and for yourself, not for the haters. One last question, and then we're gonna go to we're gonna wrap things up with uh talking about where people can support you. Zandra asks, question for folks, given the precarity of platforms right now, any tips, tools, or best practices for setting up your own website for interacting with your readers, like a newsletter, direct store, etc.? I'll actually take point on this and mention that my partner Nero via Gaius O'Reilly, in addition to doing literally everything else on earth, has a guide to setting up your own website available on his blog. I'm sure that he can link that here in the chat. Any of y'all have any other advice for that?
I don't have one, at least for this name. So no.
I would say I think that we've talked about these topics a lot in the Cartoonists United and things like, yeah, like which platforms are best to promote different types of work or how to build a personal website or like which, shops are still best for selling work. And I think there's a lot of threads and a lot of forum posts and advice in the Cartoonists United, either Discord or forum. And so if you have those more like nitpicky questions of like, should I be on Tumblr or should I be on Subscribestar or should I be on Patreon? Like go into the forums. Like there have been a lot of discussions about those amongst all of us cartoonists.
You got anything, Pom?
Yeah,
I have nothing to add.
absolutely. I will say, if you don't have a website, it's a good time to think about getting one because your website is your own and you can control it. Um, Finally, thank you all for listening to our roundtable. I want to thank Pom, Taylor, and Maya for joining me here. This has been a really amazing chat with y'all. I feel really blessed that I got to hang out and shoot the breeze about these heavy topics and also some lighter ones too. Um, where can our audience support you? Uh, Pom, why don't you go first, then Taylor, then Maya, and then I'll throw in a little tag for myself as well, as long as you folks don't mind.
Well, you can support me on subscribestar.adult. I know that they just changed their TOS, so do what you will with that. But if you
Didn't
want
they
to
change it
throw,
back?
did they change it back?
They
I
walked it
th-
back, yeah.
they walked it back and then they
That's
added a bunch of
great.
different payment processors, so I think they're not gonna do it again.
Oh, that's great news. Thanks, Taylor. Um, so yeah, you can support me on subscribestar.adult/PomPoison. And you can follow me um, on Tumblr, Blue Sky, and Instagram or Athi. All those links are on my link tree that I shared. Uh, so yeah, I look forward to seeing you on the World Wide Web.
Wow.
Yeah. Um, you can find me as Taylor Titmouse on Blue Sky without a dash, on Tumblr with a dash, and on Itch.io, I think without a dash. And that's where you can buy my books. Very few of which are actually comics these days. They're mostly illustrated novellas. Um,
They're
or on
good.
Tumblr, you can send me asks where I talk about writing and art a lot, to the point where people call me professor, which is very cute.
Aw.
Um,
Aw.
and if you're interested in my young adult comics, you can find me at taylor-robin.com. I think
Cool.
that's it for me.
I just dropped my link tree in the chat as well, but basically I'm either Maya Kobabe or Red Gold Sparks on any of the platforms I use. I would say the main ones at this point being Blue Sky, Tumblr, my beloved, please never die, Patreon, and then reluctantly still Instagram. And I believe I'm the only Maya Kobabe posting in English on the whole internet. So if you also just look up my name, I'm pretty easy to find. Um, I would say I use Patreon very much just like a newsletter. So if you, I'm not really hurting for financial support at this time, but if you just want to sign up as a free subscriber, I post like 4 times a month, and at least 3 of those are for free posts. And it's like book recommendations, process posts, sketchbook stuff that I just don't seem to have the energy to put on the wider internet at this point. So I'd love to see you there if you want to hear more about what I'm up to.
Cool. Thank you very much. And as for yours truly, I'm irisj.net. You can find me on social media, Blue Sky, Tumblr, and Pillow Fort as Iris J Comics. I'm also Iris J Comics at Mellify.men on Mastodon, the decentralized social media network. In addition, I also have a Patreon and Subscribestar on patreon.com/irisj and subscribestar.adult/irisj, where you can find I post comics, artwork, and a butt ton of writing every week, both under my own name and my nom de yeuf, Distressed Egg. It's where you can find my horny mad scientist comic, The Scandalous Sybil Throat, and a my cyberpunk comic, Crossed Wires, and an annotated version of my old graphic novel, Epiphany, which I've currently been posting every week. Tons of fun stuff in there, all for you to discover. It's great. It's horny. It's fun. It'll it'll make the conservative haters real mad if you engage with it. So check it out. Um, but yeah, thank you all so much for joining us. Have a great day to everybody in chat and to my panelists, and keep making comics. Catch you all later.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming, everyone.
Thank you for coming, but spelled the other way.
Thank you for coming. Ooh, how salacious. All right, later, y'all.
Bye.